It's another beautiful day for baseball in Los Angeles.
And baseball podcast.
Josh Schaefer and Blake Harris
Cover everything Dodgers right here on Inside the Ravine.
How is it going, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Inside the Ravine. Joining me, as always, not from the Ontario Reign headquarters, but from beautiful Pasadena, my co-host, Josh Schaefer. Josh, it hasn't been that long since we recorded, so I think I know the answer, but how are things going on your end over there?
Pretty good. It's a little warm today. You asked me about this before we started the show, but just got back from having lunch at Howlin' Ray's, the best chicken spot in Los Angeles. So for all our other Angelinos out there who haven't been, you should definitely go. But I've still got the cup, drinking water. Other than that, I feel like absolute death, and I will be taking a nap after this because that's going to be what the rest of my day looks like after going to Howlin' Ray's.
Yeah, apparently, and I was blown away to learn this too. See, I thought the only Howlin' Ray's was in Chinatown, but apparently, according to Josh, there is now one in Pasadena, which means I'm going to have to make my way over there at some point because I need to confirm whether or not this is the greatest chicken sandwich of all time, because every single person that has it says it's the greatest ever, and like Josh just said, it is the greatest ever, so yeah. I'll have to put that to the test. So hey, if you're in the Pasadena area, hit up Howlin' Ray's, but a lot of blockbusters, Josh. Howlin' Ray's coming to Pasadena, Dodgers making some trades, and we recorded just literally 2 days ago talking about the Kike Hernandez trade, and just about 2 or 3 hours after we recorded, the Dodgers made another trade, and yesterday we were like, okay, let's probably record an episode tomorrow talking about that trade, and then this morning, there's another trade, and it's like, okay, now we have to talk about this trade. So at this rate, Josh, we're going to record this episode, we're going to post it, and later tonight or tomorrow morning, there's probably going to be another trade that we're probably going to have to get to at some point. So Andrew Friedman, he's clearly busy. We're going to talk about those moves, but before we get into it, make sure you guys find Inside the Ravine on whatever social media app you guys use. Give us a follow. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, and we're also on YouTube where you guys can find our full episodes. And make sure to listen to the podcast wherever you guys get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and we are on the Odyssey app. Just search Inside the Ravine. So Josh, a couple of moves to talk about today. The first one we're going to get to is the one that happened just a few days ago that we just missed, and that was a trade with the Cleveland Guardians, a move that really essentially came out of nowhere. I think this move dropped as the Dodgers game was going on. I think it happened like in the 9th inning, and that's that they acquire shortstop Amed Rosario in exchange. And Josh, the best part about this one is, before I even say who it's for, when this move happened, I was in the shower. I get out of the shower and I have a bunch of notifications. I have a bunch of Bleacher Report things, Twitter notifications. But the first thing that I see is at the very top, and it's a text from you saying pretty much about how in disbelief you were about who the Dodgers gave up in this trade, and that is Noah Syndergaard. A guy the Dodgers probably were going to DFA at some point anyway. We haven't seen him pitch for 2 months, the worst starter in all of baseball. He's included in the deal. It's a 1-for-1. So, Josh, quick thoughts on the deal to get Rosario, but then the fact that they were able to dump Noah Syndergaard in the move as well.
Stunned. I'm stunned that they pulled this off. And I understand that there might be a couple of things here or there that people can, nitpick with it a little bit. And mostly about what you're getting in return, being, Amed Rosario. The fact of the matter here is that the Dodgers traded Noah Syndergaard, who was their worst starting pitcher this season, has been injured. We've not seen him in over a month and a half. Don't know when we'd see him again, but that's if we'd see him again. If he wasn't DFA'd, he'd been that bad. And what the Dodgers got in return, along with sending over some cash considerations, what they got in return was the number 2 hitter in the Guardians lineup, who is hitting 265 this year. So he's been pretty good at the plate. He's been pretty reliable. His OPS is at 675. That's below his, career average. His batting average at 265 is a little bit below his career average. But the fact of the matter is that this is a starting shortstop who is an easy number 2 hitter for the Guardians and probably a lot of other teams in baseball. and hasn't had a great year defensively. In fact, he's been one of the worst middle infielders defensively in baseball this season, which is funny that the Dodgers bring in both Amed Rosario and Kike Hernandez. But the fact of the matter is they bring in two guys that I'm not convinced are going to be everyday players in the starting lineup. And that's exactly what roles they were serving on, their last teams. Kike is definitely going to be more of a utility guy for the Dodgers. He's not going to be in the lineup every day. I could see Amed Rosario playing a lot more than Kike Hernandez, but this gives the Dodgers a lot more flexibility in the infield. Like, we haven't seen it as much this year, but Chris Taylor is still there. He hasn't been able to hit the ball very well, but the Dodgers can use him pretty much wherever they want, except for maybe catcher. Same thing with Kike Hernandez now. Amed Rosario is now, an easy middle infielder slot, and if you need to. Miguel Rojas today, the lineup is already out for today's game. Miguel Rojas is starting at second base today, and Dave Roberts said, "What are your thoughts on playing second base?" He said, "I'll do whatever you need me to do." So he's playing second base. You've already got Mookie in the infield a couple times this season. The Dodgers have a ton of different options of players that you can put in the middle of the infield this season, and guys that can also play the outfield. So I think you have a little bit more flexibility defensively, and you're bringing in two guys like Kike Hernandez, who, like we said the other day, a change of scenery could help, and Amed Rosario, who's having a pretty decent year at the plate. And in reality, the Dodgers get those two guys. Sure, they have their blemishes, but you give up really almost nothing for what you've been able to build so far this season. You're not losing many pieces there. So it's impressive that the Dodgers got that in return. It kind of goes along with what I said the other day about, I don't know if the Dodgers are going to make a huge splash at the deadline anymore. But then not only that, but immediately after we had our show the other day, there's more talks with the Cardinals. There's another trade that goes down today. But so far, so good for the Dodgers. These are bargain buys, low risk, high reward type guys that seem like they'd be pretty good in the lineup and a good fit.
I thought it was an okay move already when it happened, but the fact that it literally only cost Noah Syndergaard is probably one of Andrew Friedman's biggest fleeces that we've seen so far. And again, you talked about his numbers, Rosario. They're not like earth-shattering by any means, but when you compare his offensive production to Miguel Rojas this season has an OPS plus of 49. Amed Rosario's OPS plus is 89. So nearly double the production you're getting offensively. And like you said, his numbers are down across the board, but this is a guy that has hit 287, 282, 283 in years past. He's had an OPS plus above 100 in 3 of the last 5 seasons. So you're getting a really big upgrade at shortstop. And yeah, defensively, I get he's not quite the, fielder that Miguel Rojas is, but I figure Rosario's probably going to play 6-7 innings, and then the Dodgers defensively will just switch in Rojas. But also, Josh, I was blown away when I learned this. So although Rosario's numbers haven't been great that year, again, I mentioned he's just below being a league average hitter, against left-handed pitching, this dude apparently is like insane. Amed Rosario this year against lefties is hitting 303 with a 126 WRC+. Those are all-star caliber numbers, so I think it's safe to say when a lefty's on the mound, Rosario is going to be in the lineup. And again, like you said, Josh, you're getting the Guardians' number 2 hitter. I know today for the Dodgers, I think he's hitting number 5, I want to say. But I feel like on most nights, he'll be hitting 6th, 7th, maybe 8th. You're getting, a depth piece that you kind of really needed. And it's a guy that has shown he's more than capable of being an above average hitter. So I think this was a slam dunk trade for the Dodgers.
Yeah, I agree. And, you mentioned the lineup. I mentioned the lineup. This is kind of what I was talking about in terms of your versatility. You put Mookie batting leadoff back in right field today. Amed Rosario bats 5th and starts at short. Chris Taylor's in left field. Kike Hernandez bats 8th and starts in center. And Miguel Rojas bats 9th and starts at second base. So you're moving guys around a little bit to give you a little bit more depth, especially, come postseason, come down the stretch, you're going to have a little bit more help. One thing that I think it's worth pointing out is Miguel Rojas has been pretty good this year in the field. That's what we expected of him. And defensively, he's been reliable. Amed Rosario's fielding percentage at short is .964. So not great. He hasn't had a great year defensively. But again, it's the same thing we keep talking about. This is a bargain get for the Dodgers. You give up almost nothing. And by comparison, I think that's a slam dunk.
Yeah, so this was a great move for the Dodgers. One final stat on this, Josh. Going back to the start of the 2021 season, Amed Rosario is second in all of baseball with 43 three-hit games. So he's a guy, he gets on base, he gets hits. Would you like to take a guess as to who's first with 44 three-hit games since the start of 2021?
44 three-hit games. I might say Trey Turner.
It's a good guess, but I'll give you another one. He's currently on the Dodgers.
Oh, then it's probably Freddie Freeman.
Freddie. Freddie with 44, Amed Rosario with 43. So a great move for the Dodgers. And Josh, I think you were being too kind on Noah Syndergaard saying the Dodgers didn't give up that much. The Dodgers gave up nothing because, like I said,
they were probably never going to pitch for him again.
They were going to DFA him anyway, and if they would have DFA'd him, I'm sure they would have gotten some random minor leaguer. The fact that you get an everyday almost kind of guy, I think it's a fantastic move for the Dodgers. So that one, A+ in my opinion, Josh. But we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, a trade kind of has some people, all over Twitter, kind of hit or miss. People are kind of in it. People are kind of out of it. I want to get your thoughts, so we're going to take a quick break and talk about today's trade. All right, Josh, we are back. And again, today we are going to be talking about the Amed Rosario trade, but we had another one drop this morning, and it wasn't necessarily a surprising trade because one of the players involved, he was getting a lot of traction towards being traded to the Dodgers in recent days, but it ended up being a package deal. A player that comes over, a little bit surprising, the Dodgers acquire Lance Lynn from the Chicago White Sox, along with Joe Kelly. Now, Josh, I know we talked about Lance Lynn on our episode a couple of days ago, so we don't have to go really too in-depth on what exactly he brings because we talked about in the last one, but just what are your kind of quick thoughts that he actually now is officially a Dodger and it's no longer just a rumor?
Well, I mean, I'll kind of just echo what we said the other day. He's 6-9, ERA at 6.47. His WHIP is not good either, and that's all through 21 starts. But, or you know what, I'll add one more onto that, which I think is important, and we did mention this the other day. He's given up a league high 28 home runs this year. Not good, but the positives here, and then there are some. He's got a career high whiff rate at 30.9%, and he's also got a career high 10.8 strikeouts per 9 innings rate. So there is something there for Lance Lynn that maybe the results just weren't, translating to, or they weren't translating into results. There are some numbers that the Dodgers like, and it's the same thing a couple of years ago when the Dodgers are making moves for, I know this guy's kind of been hot and cold for the Dodgers, but was good last year. Player like Alex Vesia, where you're like, who in the world is this guy? But the Dodgers like one little analytic and one little stat here, and suddenly he's been a pretty consistent arm in the bullpen, the last few years since they acquired him, before the season. But it's the same kind of thing. And Lance Lynn is a player who has a good track record. He's only a year or two removed from having one of the best years of his career, and being a big free agent move. Or rather, he was a big trade deadline acquisition or guy on the market. And now you've got him coming in at a really low cost. Kind of a low cost, but for the Dodgers at the major league level, you're giving up probably not very much, not some of your highest touted prospects, but not, a complete fleecing of the White Sox by any means. But a couple of prospects who probably weren't next up in the pecking order for the Dodgers at the major league level, but some good arms. And he's coming over at a good cost along with Joe Kelly. And maybe you can do something here the second half of the season with a guy like Lance Lynn, who's some of his analytics actually aren't all that bad.
Yeah, so the Dodgers, they add a starter, and, we talked about this in the last episode. I think they're probably going to add another starter. It's tough to see the Dodgers being content with just adding Lance Lynn. We talked about all the negatives. Josh kind of hit that he leads the league in homers allowed. I think he leads the league in earned runs allowed, hits allowed, all that kind of stuff. But like you said, Josh, I think the highest whiff rate of his career, the highest strikeout per 9 of his career. So you're getting a guy that's averaging 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. And I think the biggest takeaway also is the fact that he eats innings. He averages 6 innings a start. You add him to this rotation, he averages the most innings per start now. And that's something the Dodgers desperately needed. So if they can get his home run rate down just even a little, I think he's going to improve greatly because that's the reason he's been so trash this year. It's the amount of home runs he's given up. So bring that home run rate down, give the Dodgers 6 innings, and I think they'll gladly take that. So again, It's better than having Emmett Sheehan every fifth day when he could be getting reps in the minors. This will now push him down. So, like I said, if they had another starter, I don't necessarily hate it. And again, maybe they turn things around and he does have a club option for next year. So if they tap into the Lance Lynn of old, because like you said, Josh, the last couple of years, 2019, 5th in Cy Young voting, 2020, 6th in Cy Young voting, and 2021, 3rd in Cy Young voting. So just 2 years ago, he was one of the top pitchers in baseball. Maybe the Dodgers can turn things around. But the surprising move in this deal is the fact that Joe Kelly comes back. So I don't know, Josh, if the Dodgers are just trying to get the 2020 squad back together. I talked about this the other day about how my girlfriend was saying, yeah, the Dodgers just don't have any really hot guys anymore that I really get attached to. Joe Kelly used to be in her top tier list as well. So she's just, really enjoying these trades the last couple of days. But I think I know a lot of Dodgers fans are excited that Joe Kelly is back. And originally when I looked him up, I was like, okay, his numbers have been pretty bad this year. But I took a deeper dive, Josh, and Joe Kelly this year has actually been pretty solid. I know his ERA is just below 5. He has a whip of 1.31, so those aren't great numbers. But when you look at his expected numbers, expected ERA 3.23, expected FIP 3.08, his Fangraphs WAR is 0.5, which would be the 4th best among all Dodgers relievers at the moment. So the Dodgers are getting a really good reliever and another high leverage option, which again makes the bullpen that much deeper, which is something they kind of, also needed to address at this deadline.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it's a really good guy to slot in there. And maybe the Dodgers will use him in a different role than the White Sox did. I'm interested to see what they do here. Because obviously we have seen Joe Kelly in LA, both at his very best and at not his very best. And obviously you look back to what he did his first couple years in LA, and it wasn't his best work. He was frustrating from time to time, but then, you come around and obviously there's the 2020 season and wins a ring, and there's the Correa, fiasco, which happened 3 years ago to the day that he gets traded back to the Los
Friedman
Angeles
knew
Dodgers.
Exactly what he was doing with that. He was just waiting for today to drop it.
Exactly. And then the next year he has another really good season, a 2.86 ERA in 48 appearances. So we've seen him be really good. We've seen him struggle a little bit. And ultimately, for Joe Kelly, I think that maybe this is going to be a situation that he's probably a little bit more comfortable with. He's coming into a room with a lot of familiar players, guys that were around in 2020, a few of them. And ultimately, again, it's one of those, I think, low risk, high reward type deals the Dodgers have done, which we alluded to the other day. Maybe the Dodgers stick with these types of moves going into the deadline, where you're not giving up a whole lot, but you're getting somebody that you feel like you can trust coming back in. Obviously, we had mentioned this already, but the guys that are going over to Chicago in the deal, one of them, Nick Nastrini, somebody that I think was not necessarily one of the Dodgers' highly touted pitching prospects, but a reliable arm. Another right-handed pitcher, Jordan Leisure. And then the other one is outfielder Trace Thompson, who was drafted by Chicago. And we also haven't seen him in a few months. He had the 3 home run game earlier this season, had struggled after that. And then somehow, some way in extra innings, he combined to be the hero along with Phil Bickford against the Twins and had that bases loaded walk-off walk in 10 or 11 innings or whatever it was. So again, the Dodgers not really losing a whole lot, a player that I think some people liked, but ultimately in terms of what's going on with the major league team right now, the Dodgers are adding and not really subtracting.
Yeah, I mean, you get 2 pieces that can help you win the World Series this year. I know a lot of people were kind of upset about Nick Nastrini, who I think is the Dodgers' number 10 prospect, but there are 5, 6, 7 pitching prospects that are better than Nastrini. I mean, he has an ERA above 4. His expected FIP, I think, is close to 5. So, yeah, not ideal. But if you're getting a guy, which again was just a Cy Young candidate a couple years ago, a reliever who's having maybe the best season of his career, you get that for your number 10 prospect and an outfielder who wasn't going to play. I think that's a great deal for the Dodgers. And one final thing on Joe Kelly. We talked about Lance Lynn having the best strikeout numbers of his career. Joe Kelly is also having the best strikeout numbers of his career. He's striking out hitters at a 32% rate. That's the best. And his strikeout to walk rate of 22.7% is his best as well. So again, you're getting Joe Kelly. Again, you see the ERA of 5. It looks kind of bad, but he's just been unlucky. The numbers have been a little bit deceiving. Joe Kelly's been really good. So you have a potential starter that can help in October, a potential reliever that can help in October. And again, it cost you guys that weren't going to contribute this year, maybe guys that weren't going to contribute next year, and that's the price I think you got to pay. So overall, Josh, again, I know I talked about the Amed Rosario one. That one was perfect. What grade would you give this White Sox deal?
This White Sox one, I would give another B, maybe a B plus, because we know what Lance Lynn is capable of. It just hasn't translated into good results this season, at least record wise, ERA wise. And then Joe Kelly's a player that I think the Dodgers are going to be able to rely on in the bullpen a little bit more than some of the pieces that they've got now. So again, given the fact that what these two guys are capable of, send over Trace Thompson, who wasn't contributing, and then you send over, Leisure and Nastrini, two guys that were not in the plans this year, maybe not next year, maybe the year after, if that, and two guys that are not necessarily the Dodgers' highest touted, pitching prospects. Ultimately, for me, the return is good enough for me to give it a B plus.
Yeah, I probably give it a B plus as well. And another thing on Joe Kelly, he also, like Lance Lynn, has a team option for 2024. So the Dodgers, it's not like also they're both rentals. You potentially are getting these guys for 2 seasons, 2 playoff runs, which is fantastic as well. So 2 really good trades by the Dodgers. I know a lot of people are kind of not really moved by the moves the Dodgers have been making. Personally, Josh, I think they're fine because, you look at the Kike deal, you look at the Rosario deal, and you look at the White Sox deal. They've given up nothing, essentially, for the most part, and they've gotten some, again, depth pieces that are going to help the Dodgers in the long run. One final thing I want to touch up on, Josh, and I know we've talked about this a couple times, that's the whole Nolan Arenado thing. I know that yesterday there was the report in the LA Times that said the Dodgers and Cardinals have had discussions about Arenado. Did you by chance happen to see the outcry from Cardinals beat reporters on the LA Times report that dropped?
Oh my God. The one that you tweeted was outrageous.
Can I read that, Josh?
Yeah.
Can I read that?
Let's not read any names, but you need to read just the intro, just the first paragraph.
So, for those of you that don't know, a lot of Cardinals beat reporters, like the main ones, apparently were very offended about this LA Times report saying that the Dodgers were interested in Arenado, saying that that's not going to happen. The Cardinals aren't going to trade him. So one of the Cardinals' top beat reporters posted an article today. I tweeted a screenshot of it, just a little snippet of how it begins, because this is an article. I mean, it's a great job of beginning an article. A lot of journalism teachers will tell you this is how you start an article, but this is unbelievable. If you give a mouse a cookie, a well-known children's book, the mouse will ask for a glass of milk, then a napkin, and so on. Apparently, if the NFL gives your football team to Los Angeles, then Los Angeles thinks it's entitled to your baseball team's future Hall of Fame third baseman too. A media campaign that would make both Barbie and Oppenheimer green with envy continues as a small army of anonymous sources who speak on behalf of the Dodgers do their best to connect dots between Nolan Arenado and his home state heavyweight. The problem for Los Angeles and the Dodgers is that on-the-record comments made by both Arenado and Cardinals president of baseball operations sure don't seem to mesh with the left coast media push. I don't even know what my favorite part is, Josh. The fact that they
crazy
left coast media push, or about the whole NFL taking your
to me, honestly
taking your NFL team. Which should we give them a history on the Los Angeles Rams and that they didn't in fact originate from St. Louis?
No,
because and then the Barbie Oppenheimer thing. There were just so many great things. So apparently this has struck a nerve with St. Louis Cardinals beat reporters. Somehow,
it really has. It is wild. I will say, and here's one where I will shout out the name. Katie Wu. She covers the Cardinals for The Athletic. She is also a Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication grad. So that's why I'm giving this shout out. She pointed out today, she sent out a tweet that said, yes, the Cardinals and Dodgers have had preliminary talks about a possible Nolan Arenado trade. Why would they? The two general managers must do their due diligence. But just because they've talked doesn't mean that a trade is necessarily likely. That's it. That's the entire explanation, and that's all that needs to be said. Just because there's a report doesn't mean that Nolan has packed his bags and is ready to go. The outcry, I think, has been hysterical. Frankly, it's been very humorous. But that in itself, that tweet from Katie is exactly what the situation is they need to have a conversation about it because that's their jobs. And Andrew Friedman would not be doing his job. The Cardinals front office and baseball ops would not be doing their jobs if they did not at least hear out what the Dodgers had to offer. Because if we're being completely honest with you, like we said this before too, we've talked about it about the Shohei deal, about the Shohei at the trade deadline, who is apparently off the market, by the way. But again, the Dodgers are a team that can put together a legitimate trade package for a player like Nolan Arenado that the Cardinals are getting a good return while the Dodgers are getting one of the best third basemen in baseball. The Dodgers can do that, and it would be wrong for the Cardinals to not at least listen. So that's all I'm saying. I don't think it's going to happen. I would be surprised if it happens. If I'm the Dodgers, again, like we've known that Max Muncy and Chris Taylor and then maybe even Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan are names that are on that list for the Cardinals of guys who might go over. Personally, I don't know if that's something I would be willing to do. I don't know if I'm willing to lose two major league guys like Taylor and Muncy. I don't know if I'm willing to let both Sheehan and Miller walk. For me, I would say Bobby Miller is a no-touch kind of guy right now. But again, like the Cardinals have to listen to that because that's their job. So if they're listening to it, they're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you mentioned, the Katie Wu tweet that she had in the article she posted, is the fact that it's essentially what the LA Times piece was, just saying that there are preliminary talks. Like, there's not progress, there's not momentum, it's just both teams have had discussions. And again, every Cardinals beat reporter saying, that's not going to happen, they're not going to make this trade. But it's like, they didn't say, they just said they were going to discuss it. So the fact that she came out and was like, I mean, that LA Times report was right, like, doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means these two teams need to do their due diligence. So this whole thing is just funny. It's given me a lot of reason to keep bookmarks of all these tweets from all these beat reporters, because if a trade happens, that's going to be fantastic. I even think Nolan Arenado's agent came out and said, yeah, the whole thing that he would only waive his no trade clause for the Dodgers is a lie. But, like, why would his agent come out and confirm that? Because then it just gives the Dodgers that much more leverage by saying they're the only team that he would waive his no trade clause to. So I'm not buying too much into what the agent's saying. Again, if you're the Cardinals, you don't have to trade him, but it would be dumb not to listen to offers, because if you're the Cardinals, you could make that trade with the Dodgers. If they were to get Max Muncy in return, you have a third baseman, which, if you look at their numbers, Josh, they're nearly similar when it comes to production-wise. Muncy has more homers, but Arenado, his like OPS plus, his OPS, his batting average, those are all higher. But value-wise, no, Arenado's just been slightly better. So if you're the Cardinals, you're downgrading a little, but you're getting a lot in return. So I think it's going to be fun to follow over the next couple of days just to see if anything happens between the Dodgers and Cardinals, because as the article from the LA Times mentioned, they could throw in a Jack Flaherty, a Jordan Montgomery, guys that we've talked about the Dodgers potentially adding, and with them trading for Lance Lynn, they're still in the market for a starting pitcher. So I wanted to end this on that note, Josh, the whole Nolan Arenado thing. But before we go, and again, to wrap things up, based on the trend we've seen the last couple of days, which player from the 2020 Dodgers World Series winning team is going to be a Dodger the next time we record, Josh?
I don't know. Let's look at that roster real quick.
Because, I mean, I got a bunch. I was hoping for Justin Turner. I was going to say bring him back, but I guess the Red Sox came out and said they're not going to trade him. So if it's not Justin Turner, maybe Kenley Jansen. Maybe we can get him back. Maybe
I
we can have
love to see that. I would
maybe have like a Ross Stripling. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't think Rich Hill was on the 2020 team. I think he was already gone. But hey, if we want to bring back Dick Mountain while we're at it, I'll take a reunion with him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Don't give me another reason to break out my Chad Amaze hat.
That's right. Well, I was going to say, I didn't know that when Rich Hill was playing college ball, the Chatham A's were even in existence yet. Yeah, I didn't know that they had. I didn't know the Cape Cod League was around back when Rich Hill was 18.
Yeah. I mean, he's a fun player. I would love to see, if the Dodgers bring back a guy like that, but I don't think that's necessarily in the offing. I don't know. I don't know if anybody on this roster is somebody that would come back. I mean, again, like some of these guys are literally on the Giants right now. I don't see that happening. Like you've got a few players that are on the San Francisco Giants right now. I do not see these two teams negotiating at all. Like, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Also, we don't need to get into this yet because we haven't hit the playoffs yet. But I do need to point out one thing. Our first episode of the year, I said that 6 players would hit 20 home runs this season for the Dodgers. And I said that I think it's going to happen regardless, but here are my 6 players. And here's why I think they're going to hit X amount. They're going to hit at least 20 home runs. And if 6 players hit 20 home runs, great. But I am predicting these 6. One of them was Trace Thompson. So that one crashed and burned. I think it's clear now we'll have 6 guys that we can talk about on this podcast that hit 20 home runs. But Trace Thompson is probably not going to be one of them, even if he has a terrific second half for the White Sox. I don't think it's happening.
But now if he does, Josh,
remember that until the other day.
If he comes back, which he's very close in AAA, and he reaches 20 with the White Sox, does that still count? He has 5, so he would have to hit 15 over the final 2 months, which is doable. It'd be 7 a month. So would that technically count?
Let's reevaluate by the end of this. Let's see how if I'm in a bad mood, I will count that for myself. If I'm in a good mood, I'll step back and I'll be honest and say that I didn't deserve it.
Okay. So there you go. So we'll have to wait and see. But that does wrap it up for today's episode of Inside the Ravine. As always, thank you guys for listening. Find us on social media. We're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Inside the Ravine. And you guys can listen on Spotify, Apple, and the Odyssey app. Josh, any parting words before we head out and await our next episode that's going to include another mid-trade?
I'm worried. I'm gonna take a nap after this Howlin' Rays, and I'll wake up and the Dodgers will have traded cash considerations for Kenley Jansen. So
yes, hey, I'm fine with that. I am okay with that. I will gladly take that. So stay tuned for future episodes. I'm sure we'll have one more before Tuesday because I don't think the Dodgers are going to be done. But again, as always, thank you guys so much for listening. We do appreciate it. For Josh Schaefer, this has been Blake Harris. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, enjoy the rest of your weekend wherever you may be.